Fred Durst is actually not wrong. No matter what metric you look at, millennials and people in Gen Z, people around my age, are on track to live worse, less fulfilling lives than our parents did. Life expectancy is falling. Aggregate happiness is falling. Drug addiction is becoming more common. Overdose deaths are at record highs. Home ownership rates are falling. Marriage is becoming harder to find. Student loan debt is a pair of concrete shoes, totally inhibiting millions of young people from even beginning to think about financial stability, yet alone financial self-sufficiency and success. Despite all of the headwinds, you can still carve out a good life for you and your family. Despite technological advances in transportation, medicine, and science, building a satisfying life is harder now than it has been for previous generations. I've talked at length about the importance of family and community in videos here. You can watch my video about 9 in 10 British young people feeling like life is pointless, where I come to the conclusion that a lot of the misery young Western people feel is because we cannot fulfill our basic human functions, starting and caring for and being part of a family and a community. That's a good thing to aspire to in your early or mid-20s, ideally, or even later, fine. But what if you're not in the position to start a family? You're young, you're still in school, or you don't think you're making enough money. Before starting a family, how do you make sure that you are financially secure? Most Americans would have to go on welfare if their next paycheck got lost in the mail or if they lost their job. That will be the case for many of you listening. It was the case for me for a long time. What if there was an alternative to a lifetime of wage slavery, taxation, paycheck-to-paycheck living, and then Social Security until you die? There is, obviously, but odds are you were never taught about that. And what if you could stop being poor without actually making more money, but being more efficient with the money you make from your job? How do you get to the point where you no longer need a job? This may seem far off for people still in college or working to find their career paths, but if you're making $50,000 or $60,000 a year and you still feel like you're poor, yes, I can see that economic conditions are worse than they have been in the past, but if you're making that level of money and you still feel poor, that's probably the result of poor financial decisions you're making. The boomer lament about modern financial education is basically correct. We aren't being taught basic money management, budgeting, or investing in school. Instead, we now get Drag Queen Story Hour and a deluge of propaganda designed to engender self-hatred. Useful. That's not by accident. That's because this economic system under which we live depends on financial illiteracy, irresponsibility, and ignorance. The wealthy financiers want you living paycheck to paycheck, paying them rent, paying them interest on your student loans, paying them interest on a car loan, and paying them interest on the payday loan you took out because you spent your whole paycheck 3 days after getting it. Forever. How do you break the consumer debt cycle in your own life, wrestle the control of your finances back from the banking class back to yourself, and build self-sufficiency? I'm talking about this today thanks to Carrie Mind Pleasable on Subscribestar, who asked me to talk about the value of self-sufficiency and living on less, consuming less. It's one of the ways we are controlled. Think wrong thoughts, and we will take your cushy life with deplatforming, etc. That is an excellent suggestion and increasingly relevant. Financial freedom means more than personal security. It means you can feel free to express yourself politically without fear of your life being literally destroyed if you lose your job. Let's talk about financial security today. But first, another very important type of security, internet security, which you can get for $4 a month from my friends over at Virtual Shield. It's the current year, and if you aren't using a VPN by now on your desktop, tablet, or mobile device while you browse the internet, you are exposing yourself to a lot of potential danger. I personally recommend Virtual Shield because it's the easiest, fastest, and most secure VPN on the market. They don't store browsing logs, and I trust them with my security. Trust me, you'll be glad you did. This month, Virtual Shield is offering a back-to-school celebration special of 20% off all VPN plans and all premium add-ons, including Protection Plus, residential access, monthly maintenance, phone support, and VIP performance, all for as low as $3.99 a month. Total privacy for the price of a coffee. Go to virtualshield.com/allsup for 20% off. Get your free 30-day trial to Virtual Shield and see what the hype is about. Check them out today. Let me begin by stating that I do not provide personal investment advice, and I am not a qualified licensed investment advisor. I am an amateur investor. Any information found here, including any ideas, opinions, views, predictions, forecasts, commentaries, etc., are for informational, entertainment, and educational purposes only and should not be construed as investment advice. I will not and cannot be held liable for any actions you take as a result of the information contained in this video. Consult with an attorney or a licensed financial professional before making any investment decisions. Now, despite the fact that wages have been stagnant for 30 years, today's Americans have more stuff than any people ever in history. We're also saving less money than previous generations. Since 2015, the average U.S. savings rate has been around 7.5%. For an American that makes $45,000 a year, that means about $280 a month is going into savings. Great, right? Well, no, because although that money may touch the savings account, it isn't staying there. The median American savings account has only $5,200 in it. For people under 35, the median balance is $1,580, hardly the 6 months of emergency funds you were supposed to have. Part of that is obviously due to the sheer cost of living and lack of economic opportunity, two topics I've discussed in depth in other videos. However, we also see consumer spending increases outpacing increases in the cost of living, meaning people are spending more on unnecessary consumer goods. The cost of living increased 2% in 2017, but consumer spending increased 4.8%. So 65% of Americans save little or nothing of what they make, yet we're spending more, on average, on consumer goods. These are the most desirable economic conditions for the wealthy bankers and financial elites, those that profit from high-interest loans. When you save money, that's money they have to pay you interest on. It also means you're less likely to take out loans that they profit from. High consumer spending, coupled with low interest rates and readily available credit, means that people are living paycheck to paycheck and spending a great deal of their income on consumer goods. 40% of Americans save 5% or less of their annual income. The plurality of Americans are going to be slaves to the margins of the consumption-production cycle for life, dependent on high-interest consumer loans and predatory forms of usury. Part of achieving independence, for me, has been learning to live with less, with fewer consumer goods. Let's say you typically purchase one console video game every month, or you spend the equivalent on Steam games. That's $60 a month. Say you scaled that back to one game every 2 months, or $30 on Steam per month, and you put that other $30 in a hypothetical mutual fund with 10% growth. Keep that up every month from ages 18 to 55, $30 a month into that fund. And at the end of that, you could hypothetically have a fund that's paying you $11,000 a year in gains. Or, if you did it from ages 18 to 65, you would have a fund worth $333,000, hypothetically paying you back $30,000 a year. Those are hypotheticals, obviously, but they check out mathematically. And that's just on $30 a month at 10% growth. Not a bad return. Learning to live with marginally less and making incremental changes to your financial spending habits could go a long ways towards setting up long-term financial security. It's important to be reasonable, though, when setting financial goals. Savings and investment, it's analogous to going to the gym. If you go into it with a full head of steam and unrealistic expectations, you're going to get disappointed. It's better to start small and set small, reachable goals than expect total body or financial transformation overnight. For you, it may not be video games. It may be eating out or buying collectibles or any number of consumer spending activities. Identify how much you spend on whatever it is you'd like to cut back on. Determine how much you're going to cut out of your budget. Then use a mutual fund calculator or bank interest calculator to look at how much that small amount every month could turn into over the course of your career. The short-term pain of living with less and setting reasonable goals could be extremely beneficial. Another problem young people have is falling into credit traps. Oftentimes, we don't even want the credit we're being offered. It's just foisted upon us. I get mail from time to time telling me I qualify automatically for a $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 auto loan. I'm pre-qualified. I never applied for that. I don't want that, but there it is. I could literally take that piece of paper to a dealership and be in a brand new Tesla Model 3, or BMW 3 Series, or 2019 Dodge Challenger with 485 horsepower and 6-speed transmission in just 90 minutes from now. Yeah, I understand how tempting that can be, but what feels good in the moment ends up being $700 a month for 5 years, and you end up paying an extra $3,000 in interest, taken right off the top. It's even worse with student loans and credit cards. At least with a car loan, you can sell your car and get out from under the loan, albeit much poorer. And while your car loan will be between 3 and 8%, your credit card is looking more like 24.99% monthly if you don't pay your full balance. And student loans are the worst of all because not only are you paying 6% interest, you can't discharge them by selling your degree or declaring bankruptcy. Some debt is going to be unavoidable for most people. Buying a home, for example. And you can't get approved for a home until you demonstrate some credit responsibility, which might mean taking out a small car loan for something you could pay back in full, but don't, just to build credit. That's the ironic thing. You would think living a lifestyle where you don't take out credit, you don't take out lines of credit for things that you don't need and can't pay for immediately, you would think that behavior would be rewarded with favorable consideration when it comes to getting a mortgage, but oftentimes it isn't. Oftentimes they want that history of you participating in the credit scheme. Spending money you have on unnecessary consumer goods is one thing. Spending money you don't have that you have to pay back with interest is even worse. You feel good getting product now, yes, but at what cost? Not only do you not have that money, you now can't invest that money. I listen to a lot of investment podcasts, and more important than the specific methods, the means by which people invest their money, more important than all of that is the mindset. Having the investment mindset is something many financial advisors talk about. I've seen it defined as prioritizing your financial future over the present and past. In practical terms, that can mean delaying gratification and opting for the E93 series instead of the brand new one, or not blowing your paycheck on a Steam sale and instead locking that money in your bank account. How can the $1 you have be turned into $10? I'm not here to recommend specific investment products or to give you direct financial advice, but I can tell you what mindsets are conducive to building wealth and what mindsets are conducive to wasting money. You may have to rewire the way you feel satisfaction. Reprogram yourself not to be satisfied by buying new product, but instead being satisfied by seeing a gradually higher bank balance. Every man should aspire to be independent, not to be reliant on the banks or his employer to feed his family and keep the lights on. If you found yourself fired and your job sector wiped out tomorrow, what would you do? Maybe I'm not the best example of living this ideal, I get it, and that's why I would recommend checking out podcasts like the Best Ever Real Estate Podcast. It focuses on teaching total novices the basics of real estate investment. People talk about diversifying income streams, and that's a smart idea too. What skills do you have that you could turn into a side business, or, if you had to, a primary business? As Robert Heinlein famously wrote in Time Enough for Love, specialization is for insects. Why is all of this important? If you can achieve financial independence, you're no longer trapped in the get paycheck, pay bills, stressful cycle. You can devote mental energy to things other than agonizing about having basic necessities. You can set yourself up for not only stability, but prosperity. Through smart investment, you can develop passive income streams that may mean you don't have to work, quote unquote, for a living. Your assets are working for you. And if you have that degree of independence, it means you'll have no problem starting a family and providing for a cadre of children. Also, if you're a really long-term thinker, you're already thinking, yes, if you build a passive income machine that continues growing ad infinitum, yeah, you can leave that to your kids, along with strong financial knowledge. You can set your descendants up for generational wealth, or at the very least, begin that process. The stronger we become, the less dependent we are on the next paycheck, the more resilient we become. Strategies like doxing, harassing employers, deplatforming, suddenly these don't matter as much once getting fired from your job is just a minor inconvenience, not a death blow. As Carrie Mind-Pleasable pointed out, our paycheck-to-paycheck lifestyle keeps us living in fear of losing our jobs as Americans. Anti-American groups like the ADL and SPLC threaten to dox and harass those who voice dissident political ideas. Media outlets and Antifa act as their foot soldiers. If you're afraid of the doxing and firing cycle, as you should be, you're going to be less likely to voice your political opinions. You'll be rightly afraid of political activism for the consequences it may bring down upon your family. The smarter we get with our money, the more anti-fragile we become. We have the ability to support people whose lives are destroyed by the mainstream media and Antifa and hate groups. In fact, if you're financially self-sufficient, your life won't be destroyed. You can't be fired from running your own business. The first step is committing yourself to long-term thinking. Not just 6 months ahead. I mean years ahead. In fact, generations ahead. Saving and investing and breaking out of the consumer spending on frivolities cycle is what the global elites fear the most. Not only will we stop them from profiting off of our financial irresponsibility, but more important than that, we'll be able to begin building a secure future for ourselves and our families.